At 2:17 on my wedding day, the man I was supposed to marry appeared on the church projector from an airport lounge with another woman's hand wrapped around his. The video started before the priest could stop it. Trevor Hayes filled the screen above the altar, his tie already gone, his white shirt open at the throat. Behind him, planes moved beyond a wall of glass. Beside him sat Olivia Ward, his assistant, the woman he had told me not to worry about. "Clara," he said, looking directly into the camera, "I'm sorry, but I can't do this." 140 guests went silent. My 6-year-old daughter Sophie stood near the front pew in a lavender flower girl dress, clutching her basket with both hands. My sister Hannah reached for me, but I could not move. Trevor kept talking. I tried to convince myself I could become the kind of man who raises another man's child. I can't. I won't spend the rest of my life paying for choices you made before me. A sound moved through the cathedral. Not quite a gasp. Something uglier. Pity. Olivia leaned into his shoulder. Trevor glanced at her and then back at the camera. "You deserve someone who wants the life you're offering. That isn't me. Please don't contact my family. By the time you see this, I'll be gone." The screen went black. No music. No bells. No footsteps in the aisle. Only the low, horrified whisper of guests, rearranging the facts of my life into entertainment. The borrowed wedding dress suddenly felt 2 sizes too small. I had spent 7 months paying it off in installments. The lace sleeves hid the tiny scar near my wrist from the night Sophie was born. The hem had been altered twice because I could not afford a custom gown. I had wanted to look beautiful once. Trevor's mother rose from the second pew. "Honestly," Cynthia Hayes said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "he should have done this months ago." Hannah turned on her. "Excuse me." Cynthia lifted her chin. "My son was prepared to sacrifice his entire future for a woman with debt and another man's child." He finally came to his senses. Sophie's basket slipped from her hands. White petals scattered over the marble. I found my voice then. "Do not talk about my daughter." Cynthia looked at me with the cool satisfaction of someone who had waited a long time to say what she believed. "Your daughter is the reason he left." Sophie's lower lip trembled. I crossed the space between us and knelt in front of her. "Look at me, sweetheart. Did I make Trevor go away?" The question broke something inside me more completely than the video had. "No," I took her face between my hands. "Never. This is not your fault." "Then why did he say?" "Because he is a coward." Hannah crouched beside us, wrapping one arm around Sophie. Behind me, chairs scraped. Guests were leaving. Some avoided looking at me. Others did not bother pretending they were not recording the disaster on their phones. The photographer lowered his camera. The priest approached carefully. "Miss Bennett, perhaps we should move somewhere private." Private? As if there were any private place left after the man I loved had broadcast my humiliation above the altar. I removed the engagement ring with shaking fingers. Trevor's mother held out her hand. "That belongs to our family." Hannah made a sound of disbelief. I placed the ring in Cynthia's palm. "Keep it." The cathedral doors opened behind us. Not slowly. Not cautiously. They swung inward with enough force to stop every whisper in the room. A tall man in a black overcoat stood beneath the stone archway. Rain darkened his shoulders. 2 men in suits entered behind him, then 4 more. They did not look like wedding guests. Their attention moved over exits, balconies, and hands hidden beneath jackets. The stranger walked down the aisle. I knew his face. Everyone in Chicago did. Matteo Rinaldi appeared in business magazines beside glass towers and waterfront hotels. He funded hospitals, owned shipping companies, and sat beside governors at charity dinners. He was also the man police officers stopped discussing when civilians entered the room. The newspapers called him a billionaire. The city called him the Mafia king. Cynthia Hayes went pale. Matteo's gaze moved to the blank projector screen, then to Trevor's mother, and finally to me. He stopped 3 feet away. Up close, he looked less polished than in photographs. A faint scar crossed one eyebrow. His dark hair was touched with silver near the temples. His face was controlled, but the anger in his eyes made the air around him feel dangerous. "Clara Bennett," he said. It was not a question. I stood, keeping one hand on Sophie's shoulder. "What do you want?" Something almost like approval flickered in his expression. Trevor Hayes stole $8.7 million from me. The words landed so hard that the room seemed to tilt. Cynthia shook her head. That is impossible. Mateo did not look at her. He used shell companies connected to Ms. Bennett's address, copied her signature, and transferred part of the money through an account opened in her name. I stared at him. I never opened an account for Trevor. I know. How? Because my people found the forged documents before federal investigators did. The guests who had been leaving stopped near the doors. Mateo continued in the same calm voice. Trevor did not abandon you because he was afraid of raising your daughter. He abandoned you because this wedding was the final step in his escape plan. Once you became his wife, he intended to leave the financial trail in your name and disappear. A wave of nausea rose through me. The video. The airport. Olivia. The public cruelty had not been an impulsive act. It had been camouflage. Why are you telling me this here? I asked. Because the people who helped him will assume he left the missing records with you. Hannah stepped closer. She doesn't know anything. I believe that. Then leave her alone. Mateo finally looked at my sister. If I leave her alone, someone else reaches her first. Sophie pressed against my side. Mateo's gaze lowered to her. His expression changed, not softened exactly but became less cold. Is this Sophie? I tightened my arm around her. You know my daughter's name? I know everything Trevor used while he was building his lie. Fear moved through me then. Clean and sharp. What happens now? Mateo glanced toward the cathedral doors. One of his men spoke quietly into an earpiece. Now you come with me. Cynthia found enough courage to object. She is still connected to my son. This is a family matter. Mateo turned toward her. No. Your son made it my matter when he stole from me. She cannot simply leave with you. His voice became quiet. She leaves with me. Every person in the cathedral heard him. The sentence did not sound like an invitation. I lifted my chin. You do not decide that. Mateo looked back at me. No, he said after a moment. You do. That answer surprised everyone, including me. He reached inside his coat and removed a phone. On the screen was a photograph of my apartment door hanging open, the lock broken. Another image showed drawers emptied onto the floor. Sophie's bedroom had been searched. My blood turned cold. When? 30 minutes ago. Was anyone there? No. Hannah looked at me. Come home with me. Mateo shook his head. Her house is already being watched. You expect us to trust you? Hannah demanded. No, his eyes remained on mine. I expect Clara to understand that distrust will not stop a bullet. Sophie slipped her hand into mine. Mommy, I want to go home. There was no home to return to. Not safely. I looked at the church filled with guests who had watched me become a joke. I looked at Trevor's mother, still clutching the ring. I looked at Matteo Rinaldi, a dangerous stranger offering protection that might become another kind of trap. What happens if I go with you? You and Sophie stay somewhere secure until we recover the records and prove you were not involved. And after that? You leave. Just like that. His gaze held mine. If that is what you choose. I did not believe powerful men gave anything away without conditions. But I believed the photographs. I believed the fear in the faces of Matteo's security team. And I believed Trevor had already used me once. I would not let his enemies use Sophie too. I took my daughter's hand. Hannah comes with us. Matteo nodded once. Of course. No one touches my phone. No one separates me from Sophie. No one makes decisions about her without asking me. Another brief flicker of approval crossed his face. Agreed. I gathered the skirt of my wedding dress and stepped past him. Matteo turned, placing himself between us and the watching crowd. As we walked down the aisle, the same guests who had whispered about my humiliation moved aside for the man they feared. At the church doors I looked back once. Trevor's mother still stood beside the empty altar. The ring glittered in her hand. An hour earlier, I had believed being abandoned was the worst thing that could happen to me. Then the Mafia king said I was leaving with him. And I understood that my wedding had not ended. It had become the opening move in a war I did not yet understand. The vehicle waiting outside the cathedral was not a limousine. It was an armored SUV with dark windows, thick doors, and a driver who scanned the street before opening them. Sophie climbed in first, still wearing her flower crown. Hannah followed, keeping one hand around my elbow as though she expected Mateo's men to drag us in different directions the moment she let go. Mateo entered last. The door closed with the heavy sound of a vault. For several seconds no one spoke. Rain ran down the windows, blurring the church into gray stone and yellow light. I watched it disappear behind us along with the cake, the rented ballroom, the flowers I had arranged myself, and the future I had believed was waiting at the altar. Sophie looked across the vehicle at Mateo. "Are you really a king?" Hannah closed her eyes. Mateo glanced at me before answering. "No. The people at Mommy's work said you are." "What else did they say?" "That you make bad people disappear." The driver coughed into one hand. Mateo remained serious. "People say many things when they do not know the full story." "Do you have a castle?" "A large house." "Does it have a pool?" "Yes." Sophie considered this proof of royalty. "Then you might be a king." A faint smile touched his mouth and disappeared. I had not expected him to answer her patiently. I had expected cold authority, perhaps irritation. The gentleness made him more difficult to understand. "Where are we going?" I asked. "My estate north of the city." "How long are we staying?" "Until you are safe." "That is not a length of time." "It is the only honest answer I have." Hannah leaned forward. "We could go to the police." Mateo looked at her. "You can call them now." She glanced at the guards in the front seats. "You would let us?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because preventing the call would prove every suspicion you have about me." Hannah pulled out her phone. Mateo did not stop her. She stared at the screen for several seconds and then looked at me. "Do you want me to?" I thought of federal investigators finding forged accounts in my name. I thought of Trevor's video reaching social media before we had even left the cathedral. I thought of the men who had broken into Sophie's bedroom. "Not yet." Hannah slowly lowered the phone. Mateo opened a compartment between the seats and removed a bottle of water. He offered it to me. I took it because my throat had gone dry, not because I trusted him. "Explain the money," I said. Trevor worked in financial planning for Rinaldi Development. 6 months ago, our auditors noticed irregular payments moving through construction vendors. Trevor created false invoices and redirected funds into shell companies. "Why use my name?" "You had clean credit, no criminal record, and no visible connection to my organization. More importantly, he had access to your identification, electronic signature, and home network." My stomach twisted. Trevor had offered to organize our taxes last year. He had copied my driver's license for the marriage license. He often worked from my apartment after Sophie went to sleep. Every ordinary moment had been preparation. How much money went through the account? 2.3 million. Hannah swore. I looked at Mateo. "And you believe I knew nothing? I know you work 3 12-hour nursing shifts each week, take online classes at night, and maintain less than $4,000 in savings. Your spending did not change. Your mortgage application was denied 2 months ago because of debt-to-income ratio. A woman hiding $2 million does not argue with a pharmacy over a $70 inhaler." Sophie was listening. I said quietly, "Do not discuss our finances in front of my daughter." Mateo immediately looked at Sophie. "You are right." The apology came without resistance. I had expected him to remind me that he knew more than I did. That would have been easier. "What records are missing?" I asked. "A digital ledger linking Trevor to whoever helped him inside my company." "You think he gave it to me?" "I think his partners fear he did." "Did he?" "I do not know." I laughed without humor. "You claim to know everything about me, but not whether I'm carrying $8 million in my wedding bouquet?" Mateo's gaze moved briefly to the wilted white roses still lying across my lap. "I know enough to recognize what I do not know." That was the first thing he said that sounded like wisdom instead of power. Sophie leaned against me. "Can I take off this dress?" "Soon." "It's itchy." Mateo pressed a button near his seat. "Luca, have children's clothes brought to the estate. Comfortable clothes. Size 6. A man's voice answered through the speaker. "Already arranged." I turned sharply. No. Matteo looked at me. You agreed no one makes decisions about Sophie without asking. It is clothing. It is still a decision. For a second, the air inside the vehicle tightened. Powerful men were accustomed to turning small things into examples. Trevor had done it by dismissing my opinions until I began doubting whether they mattered. Matteo looked toward the speaker. Luca, cancel the order. Silence. Then. Understood. Sophie frowned. But I want comfortable clothes. Hannah covered a laugh with her hand. I sighed. You can buy clothes, but I choose them. Matteo nodded. Send options to Clara's phone. The correction should not have mattered as much as it did. But it was the first time that day a man changed his plan because I asked. The estate appeared after nearly an hour behind iron gates and old trees. It was not a castle, but Sophie would probably disagree. The main house was built from pale stone 3 stories tall, with broad windows facing dark gardens. Security cameras tracked the SUV as we approached. Men in suits stood near the entrance beneath the rain. Hannah stared through the window. This is where you live. Matteo answered. Part of the time. How many homes do you have? Sophie asked. Too many. Can I see the pool? Tomorrow. Is my room purple? Matteo looked at me before answering. What color would you like? Purple. But not baby purple. Royal purple. He nodded solemnly. We will see what can be done. I noticed he did not promise a room already prepared for a child he had never met. He asked. That should have been normal. In his world it felt revolutionary. A woman in her early 30s met us in the entrance hall. She had Matteo's dark eyes and the posture of someone who had never needed to raise her voice to be obeyed. Bianca Rinaldi, she said. Matteo's sister and general counsel. Her gaze traveled over my dress, Sophie, and Hannah. Not cruelly. Professionally. I'm sorry about your wedding, she added. The simple kindness nearly made me cry. Thank you. We have rooms ready. I also need to speak with you about the accounts in your name, but not tonight unless you prefer. I prefer tonight. Hannah touched my arm. Clara, you haven't eaten. I also haven't slept with the knowledge that federal agents may think I stole $2 million. Bianca nodded. 20 minutes. Then food. Matteo removed his coat. A shoulder holster was visible beneath his suit jacket. Sophie stared. Is that a gun? He looked down, then covered it with the coat. Yes. Why? Because some people make bad decisions. Like Trevor. Exactly like Trevor. I should have corrected the conversation. Instead, a tired laugh escaped me. It was the first sound that day that did not feel like breaking. Bianca led us into a library where documents waited across a long table. My name appeared on the first page. Clara Elaine Bennett. Under it was the name of a company I had never heard of. North Lake Medical Supply. The signature at the bottom looked almost exactly like mine. Almost. Trevor opened the company 8 months ago, Bianca explained. He used your nursing credentials to make it appear legitimate. I stared at the page. He asked me for a copy of my license because he said his company wanted to sponsor a medical charity. Did you sign any forms? 1. A consent form for a background check. He attached the signature to the incorporation documents. Hannah sat beside me. Can this be fixed? Yes, Bianca said. But speed matters. We can notify investigators before Trevor's people create a stronger trail. What do you need from me? A complete timeline of your relationship. Access to devices Trevor used. Any packages, drives, or documents he left with you. I thought of the apartment. They searched everything. Not necessarily everything, Matteo said from the doorway. I had not heard him enter. The people who searched your home were looking for something specific. If Trevor hid the ledger well enough, they may have missed it. Then I need to go back. No. The word came instantly. I looked at him. You said I decide. I said you decide whether to come here. Returning to an unsecured location is different. It is my home. It is a target. And the evidence that clears me may be inside. Matteo's jaw tightened. Bianca watched us with interest. I said, you can send 10 guards. You can search first. But I am going. Why? Because Trevor hid things in places only I would understand. Because Sophie's life is in those rooms. Because I will not sit here while strangers decide which pieces matter. Matteo held my gaze. Tomorrow morning, he said. After my team secures the building. It was not permission. It was compromise. For now I accepted it. A staff member brought food to the library. Sophie ate half a grilled cheese sandwich before falling asleep against Hannah. Matteo lifted her carefully. I stood immediately. I can carry her. You are still wearing shoes designed by an enemy of the human body. I looked down at the heels I had forgotten were hurting me. She's heavy. I have carried heavier things. That is not reassuring. His mouth moved slightly. I followed him upstairs. The guest room chosen for Sophie had white walls, simple furniture, and a stack of purple fabric samples waiting on the desk. Nothing had been completed without asking me. Matteo placed her on the bed, removed her shoes, and pulled the blanket over her. Sophie opened her eyes briefly. Are we safe? Matteo looked at me. He did not answer for me. I sat beside her. Yes, sweetheart. For tonight. Sophie reached toward Matteo. You can come to my tea party tomorrow. His expression changed. I have meetings. She frowned. Matteo glanced at me, as if meetings with armed men were easier to negotiate than one disappointed child. What time? He asked. 3. I will be there. Sophie closed her eyes again. After we left the room, I said, you don't have to make promises to her. I do if I intend to keep them. Trevor promised her things too. Matteo's face hardened. I am not Trevor. No, I said. That is what frightens me. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he opened the door to my room. You have a lock. Only you and Sophie have the code. Hannah is across the hall. No cameras inside any bedroom. You expect me to believe that? No. His honesty disarmed me again. I expect you to verify it with the device Bianca left on the desk. I looked inside. A small electronic scanner waited beside the bed. Matteo stepped back. Good night, Clara. Matteo. He stopped. Why were you at my wedding? Something unreadable moved through his eyes. To collect Trevor. That is not the full answer. No. Will you tell me tomorrow? He considered the question. Yes. He walked away. I closed the door and locked it. Then I scanned the room for cameras. There were none. That frightened me almost as much as finding one would have. Because it meant the Mafia king was capable of honoring a boundary. And men who were entirely monstrous were much easier to resist. My apartment looked as though a storm had formed inside it. The front door had been temporarily repaired, but splintered wood still surrounded the lock. Couch cushions lay open on the floor. Kitchen drawers had been emptied. Sophie's books had been thrown from the shelves, and the mattress in my bedroom had been cut along one side. I stopped in the doorway. Matteo stood behind me with Luca Santoro, his chief of security, and 2 officers from a private forensic team. Hannah had remained at the estate with Sophie. I can replace everything, Matteo said. I turned on him. That is not the point. His expression did not change. I know. The answer was quiet enough that my anger lost its easiest target. I stepped over a broken picture frame. The photograph inside showed Sophie at 4 years old, her face covered in chocolate frosting. Trevor had taken the picture. I picked it up and felt foolish for the pain that followed. Not everything had been false. He had laughed that day. He had wiped frosting from Sophie's hair. He had seemed happy. Perhaps that was the cruelest part of betrayal. It did not erase the good memories. Poison them. Luca began directing the search team. No one moves anything without photographing it. Check vents, furniture cavities, electrical outlets. He looked at me. Where would Hayes hide something he expected you to overlook? I studied the apartment. Trevor liked puzzles. He turned passwords into jokes only he understood. He hid anniversary gifts behind books I had mentioned once and forgotten. If it was intended for me to find, he would use Sophie. Matteo's attention sharpened. What does that mean? Something connected to her routines. A toy. A story. A place he assumed no one dangerous would examine closely. I entered Sophie's room. Her stuffed animals had been cut open except for one. Mr. Buttons, a faded brown rabbit she had owned since infancy, remained on the bed. The intruders had left him untouched because one ear had already been torn and repaired badly enough to make the toy look worthless. Trevor had sewn that ear 2 weeks earlier. I reached for it. Matteo caught my wrist. Wait. He signaled to the forensic officer, who scanned the rabbit for explosives and electronics. It's a stuffed animal, I said. It is a container. The officer nodded. There's metal inside the left ear. I stared at the crooked stitches. They cut the thread carefully. A small silver key fell onto the bed. Numbers had been engraved along the side. Luca photographed it. Bank key. No, I said. I recognized the number pattern. Sophie's birthday reversed, followed by the street number of the first apartment Trevor and I had viewed together. He wanted me to know it was his. Matteo looked at me. Or wanted someone to believe it was. I pulled my arm away. You think I planted it? No. Then stop looking at me like evidence. His face became still. I was looking at you like someone Trevor believed he understood. And did he? Enough to hide a key where only you would find it. The key belonged to a private storage vault at Union Central Station. Matteo wanted to send Luca. I insisted on going. This time he did not argue long. The station was crowded with commuters, tourists, and security cameras. Matteo's men moved around us without appearing to. He had changed from a suit into a dark sweater and coat, but no clothing could make him look ordinary. People noticed him without knowing why. At the vault counter, the clerk entered the number and frowned. The box requires 2 forms of identification. Whose? I asked. Clara Bennett and Trevor Hayes. I felt Matteo become still beside me. I am Clara Bennett. The clerk examined my license and then checked a file. Your secondary identification is already registered. I never registered anything here. He turned the screen slightly. A copy of my nursing license appeared beside a photograph taken from social media. Trevor had built access around me. The clerk led us to a private room. Inside the box was a burner phone, a flash drive, and an envelope addressed to me. My hand shook as I opened it. Clara, if you are reading this, things went wrong. I know you hate me. You should. But not everything is what it looks like. The money was never just mine. Do not trust anyone named Rinaldi, not even the one who says he is protecting you. There is a code on the phone. Use Sophie's favorite book. I'm sorry, Trevor. Matteo read the note over my shoulder. I folded it. He knew you would come. Yes. And he expected me to be with you. Probably. Matteo held out his hand for the phone. I did not give it to him. It was addressed to me. It may contain malware or a tracking device. Then we have it examined. By my people. By someone we both approve. His eyes narrowed slightly. I waited. Bianca chooses a federal certified digital examiner with no ties to the company, he said. Agreed. Luca looked between us. Are all conversations going to become negotiations? Yes, Matteo and I answered together. For the first time, Luca smiled. Back at the estate, Bianca arranged the examination. The phone contained one encrypted audio file. The password clue was Sophie's favorite book, The Little Prince. Trevor had read it to her twice and complained both times that the ending was depressing. He would have remembered her favorite quote because she repeated it whenever he skipped pages. What is essential is invisible to the eye, I said. The examiner entered the phrase without spaces. The file opened. Trevor's voice filled the library. I did what you asked. The Bennett accounts are active, the funds moved, and the wedding gives me legal cover. Another man answered. You were supposed to marry her and remain for 6 months. I changed the plan. You do not change my plans. I'm not staying in Chicago while Rinaldi closes in. The second voice was distorted electronically. Trevor continued. I left the ledger where no one will find it. You had better pray that is true. The recording ended. Bianca replayed it. Matteo stood near the windows, his expression unreadable. Can the distortion be removed? He asked. Possibly, the examiner said. It will take time. I looked at Matteo. Trevor warned me not to trust anyone named Rinaldi. Yes. Who inside your family had access to the money? Several people. Names. Bianca answered before he could. Matteo. Me. Our cousin Dominic. 2 senior financial officers. Trevor. Who benefits if Matteo is blamed? Matteo's jaw tightened. Bianca looked at her brother. Dominic becomes acting chairman if Matteo is indicted or incapacitated. Silence settled across the library. Matteo said, "That does not make him guilty." "No," I replied. "But it makes him worth investigating." Matteo turned toward me. "Dominic is family. So was Trevor supposed to be." His eyes hardened. I regretted the words only because they were cruel, not because they were wrong. Matteo walked out of the library. Bianca watched him go. "He has known Dominic since childhood. He nearly married a man who used her daughter's stuffed rabbit as a hiding place," Hannah said from the doorway. "I think Clara has earned the right to distrust childhood bonds." Bianca looked at my sister. "I like you. Most dangerous women do." Sophie appeared behind Hannah wearing purple pajamas. "Is it tea party time?" I checked the clock. 3 minutes after 3. Matteo had left the room angry. I expected him to forget. At exactly 3:05, he entered the playroom wearing the same dark expression and carrying a tray with 3 tiny cups. Sophie pointed toward the child-sized chair opposite her. "You're late." "By 5 minutes. That is late." Matteo sat. "My apologies." She handed him a plastic crown. "You have to wear this because you're the king." Luca turned away, his shoulders shaking. Matteo placed the crown on his head. I stood in the doorway and watched the man people feared accept imaginary tea from my daughter. He caught me looking. For a moment neither of us spoke. Trevor's warning remained in my pocket. Do not trust anyone named Rinaldi. Trust, I was beginning to understand, was not a door that opened once. It was 100 small choices. Matteo had made some good ones. That did not mean he would make the next. By sunrise, the wedding video had been watched more than 4 million times. Someone had edited Matteo's entrance together with Trevor's abandonment and posted it under the title "Bride Dumped at Altar. Leaves with Billionaire Mafia Boss." The comments were worse than the video. "She planned this. No wonder the groom ran. Single mothers always look for a richer replacement. She traded a finance guy for a crime lord in under 10 minutes. The hospital called before breakfast." My supervisor, Denise, sounded uncomfortable. "Clara, administration wants you to take paid leave until the legal situation is clarified." "I have done nothing wrong." "I know. Then why am I being suspended?" "You are not suspended. The media is outside the hospital. Patients are asking questions." 2 reporters entered the emergency department pretending to be relatives. I closed my eyes. "How long?" "A week, maybe 2. I need the shifts." "You'll be paid." "That is not the point. My work was the one part of my life Trevor had not touched. Now he had reached that too." When I ended the call, Matteo stood at the opposite end of the breakfast room. He had heard enough. "I will have the story removed." "You cannot remove the internet." "I can remove specific people's incentive to continue." "That sounds like a threat." "It is." "No." His expression changed. "Clara, you do not frighten people because they insult me. They are publishing lies. Then we answer with truth. Truth rarely travels as fast. Neither does fear without consequences." Matteo stepped closer. "You believe I should allow strangers to attack you? I believe you should ask what I want before deciding how to defend me." Sophie entered with Hannah and immediately noticed the tension. "Are you fighting?" "No," I said. "Yes," Matteo said at the same time. Sophie looked between us. "Mommy says fighting is okay if nobody is mean." Matteo's eyes remained on me. "Your mother is correct." "Then say sorry." "To whom?" "Each other." Hannah picked up a piece of toast and looked delighted. Matteo drew a slow breath. "I am sorry I attempted to solve your problem without consulting you." Sophie turned to me. I folded my arms. "I am sorry I assumed your solution would be violent before hearing it." Matteo lifted an eyebrow. "Would it have been violent?" I asked. "Not necessarily." "That is not reassuring." Sophie climbed into her chair, satisfied that justice had been served. Bianca entered carrying a tablet. "We have a larger problem." Trevor had released copies of the forged bank records to a reporter. In a statement sent from an encrypted account, he claimed I had introduced him to Matteo. helped create the medical supply company, and then betrayed him when Matteo offered me protection and money. A photograph showed me and Matteo leaving the cathedral together. The implication was obvious. My humiliation had been transformed into motive. Bianca placed a second document on the table. Federal investigators want to interview Clara this afternoon. Matteo said. No. I looked at him. He corrected himself. Not without counsel. Bianca smiled faintly. Progress. The interview took place at the estate with Bianca present. 2 federal agents asked about Trevor, the accounts, and my relationship with Matteo. Did Mr. Rinaldi offer you money before the wedding? One agent asked. No. Had you communicated with him privately? No. Then why did he arrive? I looked toward Matteo through the glass doors of the adjoining room. He had still not fully answered that question. He says he came for Trevor. You do not sound convinced. I am not convinced of anything after this week. The honesty seemed to help. Bianca gave them the forged documents, the key, and a copy of the audio file. By the time they left, I was no longer their obvious suspect. But I was not cleared. That evening, Matteo found me in the garden overlooking the lake. Sophie and Hannah were inside choosing paint colors for the bedroom. You handled the interview well, he said. I told the truth. Most people do not handle truth well under pressure. I turned toward him. Why were you at the wedding? He looked across the water. I told you. Trevor was supposed to lead me to the missing ledger. You could have arrested him before the ceremony. I do not arrest people. Then whatever word your organization uses. We needed him to believe he had escaped. The answer made my skin cold. You knew he might run. I knew it was possible. Did you know about Olivia? Yes. I stared at him. You knew my fiancé was leaving with another woman, and you let me walk into that church. I did not know he would send the video. But you knew enough to stop the wedding. Matteo's face remained controlled. Stopping it too early would have warned the person behind him. The garden seemed to shift around me. My pain had been useful to him. The empty altar. Sophie's question. Cynthia's cruelty. The guest's recording. All of it had been acceptable collateral in Matteo's investigation. You used me. No. You watched Trevor build his escape around my wedding because it helped you catch a thief. I had people prepared to intervene before the marriage license was signed. That is supposed to make this better? I prevented you from becoming legally tied to him. You could have warned me. And lost Trevor. The answer came too quickly. We both heard it. Matteo looked at me. For the first time since entering the church, he seemed to understand that power could not repair what power had chosen to permit. I am sorry, he said. You are sorry because I found out. No. You decided my humiliation was worth the evidence. Yes. The blunt admission hurt more than an excuse. He continued. At the time I believed it was. And now? Now I know the cost had a face. I laughed bitterly. Mine. Yours. Sophie's. Your sister's. He stepped closer but stopped before reaching for me. I cannot undo the church. No. I can make certain Trevor does not define what happens next. That is not your decision either. Matteo nodded slowly. No. It is yours. I walked past him. At the garden doors, alarms began sounding from the front gate. Luca's voice came through Matteo's radio. Vehicle breached the east entrance. Possible shooter. Matteo moved before I understood the words. He pushed me behind a stone wall as glass exploded from the upper window. A bullet struck the place where my head had been. Security guards returned fire toward the trees. Matteo covered me with his body. His hand pressed against the back of my neck, holding me below the wall. Stay down. Another shot hit the stone above us. I heard Sophie scream from inside the house. I tried to rise. Matteo held me in place. My daughter. Bianca has her. You don't know that. I do. His radio crackled. Child secure. Hannah secure. The shooting stopped after less than a minute. The attacker escaped through the woods, abandoning a rifle near the property line. Matteo did not release me immediately. His breathing was calm. Mine was not. You were right, he said quietly. About what? Truth does not travel as fast as fear. He looked toward the shattered window. But bullets travel faster than both. I wanted to reject the lesson because it came from him. Then Sophie ran from the house and threw herself into my arms. I held her so tightly she protested. Matteo stood several feet away, blood moving down one side of his face where flying stone had cut him. Sophie saw it. "You're hurt." "It is nothing." "That is what Mommy says when it is something." She reached for his hand. Matteo looked at me before taking hers. In that moment I understood the trap more clearly than the locked gates ever could have shown me. It was not his house. It was not his guards. It was the fact that when danger came, Matteo placed his body between us and the bullet without hesitation. Protection could become a prison. It could also feel dangerously close to safety. The rifle recovered near the estate belonged to a Rinaldi security contractor who had disappeared 2 days earlier. The bullets matched ammunition issued through a warehouse controlled by Dominic Rinaldi. Matteo refused to call that proof. "Dominic oversees 12 divisions," he said during a meeting in the library. "Anyone could have accessed the inventory." Bianca closed the file. "Anyone with executive clearance. Which includes you." Her expression hardened. I watched the siblings from the other side of the table. Matteo trusted Bianca enough to give her legal control of his empire, but even she was not protected from suspicion. Perhaps that was how he survived. Perhaps it was why he seemed so alone. The digital examiner had partially removed the distortion from Trevor's recording. The hidden voice was male, probably between 35 and 50, with a Midwestern accent and a slight rasp. Dominic fit. So did half the senior men in Matteo's company. "We need another sample," I said. Matteo looked at me. "From Dominic?" "From everyone with access. Compare them without identifying whose voice belongs to whom. That avoids bias." Bianca nodded. "I can collect recordings from board meetings." Matteo leaned back in his chair. "You have taken over my investigation. You were doing badly." Luca covered a cough that might have been a laugh. Matteo looked toward him. "Do you have something to add?" "No, boss." "Good." Sophie appeared in the doorway wearing a purple paper crown. "You forgot." Matteo checked the time. 3:00. Again. His meeting involved stolen millions, an attempted assassination, and a traitor inside his family. Sophie did not care. "You promised Tuesday tea," she said. "I remember." "You are still sitting there." Matteo closed the file. Meeting adjourned. Bianca stared at him. "You canceled a security council for a tea party?" "I rescheduled it." Sophie held up a second crown. "You can come too." Bianca immediately stood. "I have always believed tea parties are essential to corporate governance." The playroom had been painted royal purple. I had approved the shade, furniture, and every toy that entered it. Matteo had kept his promise to ask. He did not always understand why asking mattered, but he did it. That unsettled me more than his mistakes. Men who refused to change could be dismissed. A man learning how is harder to leave untouched. Sophie assigned roles. She was Queen Sophie. Bianca became Duchess Sparkle. I was the royal physician. Matteo was the dragon. "I thought I was the king," he said. "You can't be king because I am queen. Those roles can coexist." "Not in my kingdom." Matteo accepted a pair of green wings made from cardboard. Luca stood in the hall photographing him until Matteo noticed. "If that image leaves your phone, you will spend winter supervising parking structures." Sophie pointed one tiny finger at him. "No threats at tea." Matteo lowered his head. "My apologies, Your Majesty." For 20 minutes, the Mafia king drank imaginary tea and allowed my daughter to diagnose him with dragon flu. Then Sophie announced the cure required a kiss on the forehead from the royal physician. I froze. Bianca looked delighted. Matteo's eyes met mine across the tiny table. "It is medically necessary," he said. "I question the Queen's credentials." Sophie crossed her arms. "You said I make the rules." Matteo leaned forward slightly. I pressed a quick kiss to his forehead. His skin was warm beneath my lips. The room changed. Not visibly. Only inside me. I stepped back too quickly and knocked over a plastic cup. Sophie sighed. "Doctors are messy." After the tea party, Matteo found me in the corridor. "You are avoiding me." I am walking to the library. You have taken the longest possible route. I like hallways. He moved beside me. The cut near his temple had been covered with a narrow bandage. Without the suit jacket, he looked less like a king and more like a tired man who had not slept properly in years. Your hospital reinstated you, he said. I stopped. What? Bianca sent the preliminary forensic report to administration. Your supervisor called this morning. I reached for my phone and found 2 missed calls. I can return Monday? Yes. Relief moved through me so quickly my eyes filled. Matteo watched my face. I could arrange a private nursing position with better hours. No. I expected that answer. Then why offer? Because I am learning that giving you an option is different from choosing it for you. The words were careful, as though Bianca had made him rehearse them. I smiled despite myself. You sound uncomfortable. I am. Good. Growth should hurt. His gaze dropped briefly to my mouth. The attraction between us had been present since the bunker, but now it existed without immediate danger to disguise it. That made it more dangerous. Matteo stepped closer. I did not move. You kissed me, he said. It was prescribed. By an unlicensed 6-year-old. She outranks us both. His hand lifted, then stopped inches from my cheek. May I? The question made my heart strike hard against my ribs. I wanted him to touch me. That was the problem. Not yet. Matteo lowered his hand immediately. No anger. No persuasion. Why? He asked. Because I don't know what you want from me. I want you. The simplicity of the answer stole my breath. As what? He considered it. Not as a debt. That is not enough. No. Not as someone you rescued. No. Not as something Trevor left behind. His expression hardened. Never. I looked toward the windows. Then tell me why you noticed me before the wedding. Matteo was silent for a long moment. 3 years ago, Bianca was brought into your emergency department after a car accident. I remembered the night. A dark-haired woman with internal bleeding. A waiting room filled with intimidating men. One of them had stood behind the glass, watching every movement without speaking. You were there. Yes. I didn't know who you were. You told me to move because I was blocking the trauma cart. That sounds like me. You stayed beside Bianca after your shift ended because she woke frightened and no family member was allowed inside yet. I was doing my job. You held her hand. Matteo's voice lowered. Everyone in my world was waiting for orders. You were the only person asking what she needed. Something inside me softened against my will. Did you follow me after that? I had Luca confirm you were safe. That is a polite way to say yes. I did not interfere. You knew about Trevor. I learned he was dating you when the audit began. And you continued watching. Yes. That is disturbing. I know. The fact that he did not defend it mattered. I am not ready, I said. For what? You. Matteo nodded. I can wait. How long? As long as the answer remains not yet instead of never. I should have told him never. Instead, I walked away carrying the warmth of his almost touch against my skin. That evening the examiner sent Bianca a message. The hidden voice on Trevor's recording matched Dominic Rinaldi with 87% probability. Matteo read the report twice. Then he tore it in half. Not because he believed it was false. Because belief had finally become unavoidable. Returning to the hospital should have made life feel normal. Instead, 3 reporters waited outside the employee entrance, 2 patients asked for photographs, and someone had taped a printed image of Matteo carrying me from the cathedral to my locker. Beneath it, in red marker, were the words, "Upgrade of the Year." I tore it down before Sophie could ever hear about it. Denise moved me to a restricted unit away from public entrances. My coworkers tried to act normal. Some succeeded. Others stared at the security officer waiting near the nurse's station. Matteo had assigned Raphael to me. I had selected him from 3 options after reviewing their backgrounds. That was the compromise. Raphael stood far enough away to avoid interfering, and close enough to make every police officer on the floor uneasy. At lunch, a nurse named Kelly sat across from me. Is it true he owns the Belladonna Hotel? Yes. And the shipping port? Part of it. And that house by the lake? Yes. She leaned closer. Did he really say you were leaving with him in front of everyone? I opened my yogurt. Yes. That is either terrifying or the hottest thing I have ever heard. It was mostly terrifying. Mostly. I looked at her. Kelly smiled. There it is. There is nothing. Of course. My phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number appeared. You look beautiful in blue. Ask your bodyguard to check the parking garage. I was wearing blue scrubs. I showed Raphael. He immediately locked down the staff corridor. Security found a man's body inside a parked car. He had been one of the financial officers Bianca planned to question about Dominic. A note had been pinned to his coat. Stop digging. The hospital sent me home under guard. Matteo was waiting in the estate security room when we arrived. He saw my face and came toward me. Are you hurt? No. His hands closed around my shoulders before he remembered to ask. He released me immediately. I am sorry. It's okay. No. It is not. The distinction was small, but I felt it. Bianca displayed the note on a screen. The victim was prepared to testify that Dominic approved the false vendors. Then Dominic knows we have the recording, Matteo said. Or knows enough to assume. Luca entered with another problem. Trevor had given an interview to a London tabloid through an encrypted video service. He claimed Matteo and I had been having an affair for months. He said I convinced him to move the money, then betrayed him when Matteo offered a richer life. He also says Sophie calls Matteo her father, Luca added. My anger became physical. He does not get to use her again. Matteo's face turned cold enough to frighten everyone except me. I will answer publicly. How? Bianca asked. Press conference tomorrow. I looked at him. What are you going to say? The truth. All of it. As much as security permits. Bianca considered the legal implications. We can disclose the forged accounts and confirm Clara is cooperating with investigators. That won't stop the affair story, Luca said. Matteo's gaze moved to me. I understood before he spoke. No. It would be temporary. No. Hannah, who had joined the meeting after putting Sophie to bed, looked between us. What are we refusing? Matteo said. A public engagement would explain why Clara left with me, and remove the perception that she is an unprotected witness. Hannah laughed in disbelief. You want her to replace a wedding disaster with a fake engagement to a mafia boss? When stated that way, the strategy sounds less elegant. It is not elegant when stated anyway. I folded my arms. I am not pretending to belong to you to make strangers respect me. That is not what I am asking. It is exactly what you are asking. Matteo looked toward the security screen showing the murdered officer. People in my world understand alliances. If they believe you are temporary, they believe you can be used. And if they believe I am your fiancé, they understand touching you means challenging me. I should not need your name to make my life valuable. No. His voice softened. But the men trying to kill you do not share your principles. The room went quiet. I hated that he was right about danger. I hated more that the solution required another public performance after Trevor had already turned my wedding into one. Bianca spoke carefully. The engagement can be defined by contract. Separate rooms, no financial dependence, no control over Clara's employment or Sophie. Either party can end it publicly at any time. Hannah looked at me. You do not have to do this. I thought of the body in the garage. I thought of Sophie's school photograph circulating online. What happens if I refuse? Matteo answered without hesitation. We find another way. That changed everything. He did not threaten. He did not describe what innocent people might suffer. He let the choice remain mine. I have conditions, I said. Matteo's eyes held mine. Name them. The engagement exists only publicly. Sophie is told the truth in language she can understand. No wedding date. No control over my money, education, work, or family. You do not touch me for cameras without asking first. Agreed. And when this ends, you say publicly that I ended it. A muscle moved in his jaw. Agreed. Hannah whispered. Clara. I looked at her. I am not marrying him. Matteo said quietly. Not unless you choose to. The next afternoon, More than 60 reporters filled the ballroom of the Belladonna Hotel. I stood beside Matteo beneath lights bright enough to erase every shadow. He wore a dark suit. I wore a cream dress Bianca selected from 6 options I approved. A simple ring rested inside Matteo's pocket. Before we entered, he asked, "Are you certain?" "No. We can stop." The offer sounded genuine. I looked through the doors at cameras waiting to turn my life into another story. "Let's take it back." Matteo stepped to the podium first. He disclosed Trevor's theft, the forged documents, and my cooperation. He stated that I had never received or benefited from the missing funds. Then a reporter called out, "Were you involved with Ms. Bennett before the wedding?" "No." "Why did you take her from the church?" "Because armed men were searching her home while her fiancé fled the country." "Is she your mistress?" Matteo's expression hardened. I stepped toward the microphone before he could answer. "No." The room turned toward me. "I am not anyone's mistress, collateral, payment, or prize." Trevor Hayes used my identity and humiliated my daughter to protect himself. Mr. Rinaldi helped us because the crime was connected to his company. A woman in the front row raised her hand. "Then what is your relationship now?" Matteo looked at me. He waited. I nodded. He removed the ring and placed it on my finger. It was not enormous or theatrical. A narrow platinum band held a deep blue sapphire. "Clara Bennett is my fiancée," he said. Cameras flashed. A reporter shouted, "When is the wedding?" "There is no date," I answered. "Was this planned before Trevor left?" "No." "Are you in love?" The question struck harder than the others. Matteo's gaze met mine. He could have lied for the cameras. Instead, he said, "I am not asking her to answer that before she knows herself." The room quieted. Another reporter pushed forward. "Mr. Rinaldi, are you claiming Ms. Bennett as part of your family?" Matteo's expression changed. He looked toward me again. "May I?" he asked quietly. I knew what the cameras expected. I also knew he would accept no. "Yes." His hand settled at my waist. He kissed me. The first contact was controlled, almost careful. Then my fingers tightened against his jacket and the performance became something else. Warmth moved through me with frightening speed. Matteo pulled away before I did. He faced the reporters. "She stands beside me because she chose to. Anyone who mistakes that choice for weakness will answer to both of us." The room erupted in questions. I barely heard them. My mouth still remembered his. The engagement was fake. The kiss was supposed to be strategy. Nothing about the way Matteo looked at me afterward felt false. The public engagement changed the story within hours. The same accounts that had called me a gold digger began posting slow-motion clips of Matteo asking permission before kissing me. Women argued online about whether his restraint made him more dangerous or less. Kelly sent me one message. "Mostly terrifying." I did not answer. At the estate, Sophie examined the sapphire ring while eating cereal. "So you're really marrying Matteo?" "No date has been chosen." "That means maybe." "Yes." "Do you like him?" Matteo entered the room at exactly the wrong moment. Sophie looked from me to him. "Well." I took a long drink of coffee. "He is improving." Matteo sat across from us. "That is not an answer." "It is the answer available." Sophie sighed. "Grown-ups make everything difficult." She left for her lesson with Hannah. Matteo waited until the door closed. Was the kiss a mistake? The direct question made me set down the cup. No. Was it only for the cameras? No. His gaze darkened. I felt the same pull that had unsettled me in the corridor. "This cannot become real while we are trapped inside danger and contracts," I said. "Why?" "Because I need to know whether I want you when I am free to walk away." "You are free now." "Am I?" The estate gates required his security approval. Reporters waited near my apartment. Trevor's associates had killed a man in my hospital garage. Matteo understood. "No," he said. "Not completely." "Then we wait." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. Waiting became difficult. We worked together every day. Bianca traced Trevor's accounts. I reviewed messages, photographs, and receipts from our relationship, searching for patterns no investigator would recognize. Trevor had hidden passwords inside ordinary memories. One account used the date Sophie lost her first tooth. Another used the initials of a restaurant where he proposed. A third was protected by the name of a song he played during every road trip. Each discovery made me feel useful and violated at the same time. Mateo never entered the room without knocking. He asked before reading private messages. He stopped calling protection non-negotiable after I told him the phrase made every negotiation feel dishonest. He also attended every tea party. Sometimes he came directly from meetings with captains and politicians, removed his jacket, surrendered his phone to Sophie, and sat on the floor wearing a paper crown. One night, after Sophie had gone to sleep, I found him alone in the library. A glass of whiskey sat untouched beside him. "You are not drinking." "I do not drink when there is an active threat." "Is there ever not an active threat?" "Rarely." I sat opposite him. The house was quiet. Rain touched the windows softer than on the wedding day. "Tell me about Dominic." Mateo looked at the fire. "We grew up together. His father was my father's younger brother. Dominic was the one person allowed into my room without knocking. That sounds dangerous even for children. He once broke my nose over a toy boat. Did you deserve it?" "Yes." A small smile passed between us. Mateo continued. "When my older brother died, Dominic stood beside me. When men challenged my leadership, he defended me before I asked. And now you think he tried to kill you? I think evidence says he did. That is not the same as believing it." "No." "Why?" Mateo's fingers rested against the glass. "Because if Dominic is the traitor, then I failed to see the man closest to me. You did not create his choices. I gave him access. Trust is not stupidity just because someone abuses it." He looked at me. "Do you believe that about Trevor?" The question struck deep. I thought of every sign I had missed. The late meetings. Olivia's perfume in his car. Passwords he changed. The way he became irritated when I asked about work. "I am trying to." Mateo stood and walked toward the window. "After my brother was killed, I decided no one would ever surprise me again. That is impossible. I know that now. Because of Dominic? Because of you." My heartbeat changed. Mateo turned. "You surprise me every day." He crossed the room slowly. This time I did not retreat. His hand lifted. "May I touch you?" "Yes." His fingers brushed my cheek. The tenderness was more dangerous than command. It required nothing from me except honesty. "I have wanted to do this since the church," he said. "You looked angry in the church." "I was." "At me." "At everyone who allowed you to stand there alone." His thumb moved lightly along my cheekbone. "And at myself. For not warning me." "Yes." I saw the regret in his face. It did not erase what he had done. It made forgiveness imaginable. "May I kiss you?" he asked. This time there were no cameras. No reporters. No strategy. "Yes." Mateo kissed me as though he had spent years learning control, and had finally found one reason to surrender it carefully. His hand remained against my face. Mine moved to the back of his neck. The kiss deepened slowly, every change an invitation rather than a demand. When we separated, my forehead rested against his. "This is a bad idea," I whispered. "Yes. You are supposed to disagree. I have learned not to lie when the truth is obvious." A phone began ringing on the table. Mateo ignored it. It rang again. Then Luca's voice came through the emergency speaker. "Boss, Trevor contacted Clara's old number." The moment ended. The message contained a location and 6 words. "Mateo is using you. Come alone." Mateo read it once. "No." I looked at him. He exhaled. "What do you want to do?" "I want to hear what Trevor knows." "He will be using you." "I know. It is a trap." "Probably." Mateo's expression became hard. But we need the ledger, and he may lead us to Dominic." "You are suggesting we allow the trap." "I am suggesting we build a better one." For several seconds he said nothing. Then he called Luca. "Prepare surveillance. Clara chooses the location of the backup team." I looked at him. He met my gaze. "Together," he said. The word felt more intimate than the kiss. Trevor chose a closed aquarium on the south side for the meeting. He had taken Sophie there once and complained about the admission price for an entire week. The choice was meant to remind me of better memories, or to prove he still knew which memories could hurt. Mateo's team entered first, hidden among maintenance corridors and service rooms. I wore a transmitter beneath my coat. Mateo waited 2 galleries away despite wanting to stand beside me. Trevor appeared in front of the dark shark tank 20 minutes late. He looked thinner than he had on the wedding video. His beard had grown unevenly. Olivia was not with him. "You actually came," he said. "You used my daughter's name to steal millions." "I came for answers." His face tightened. "I never meant for Sophie to be involved. You told a cathedral full of people she was the reason you left. I needed everyone angry at me for the wrong reason. You succeeded." Trevor looked toward the dark glass. "Dominic planned everything. The accounts. The vendors. Your name. Why me? Because you were clean. Because you trusted me. Because a married couple moving money looked less suspicious. The admission should have made me hate him more. Instead, I felt only emptiness. You were supposed to marry me. For 6 months. Then Dominic would arrange evidence that you stole the money and ran." My stomach turned. "Why did you change the plan?" "Olivia found out Dominic intended to kill us both after the transfer. So you abandoned me first. I thought public rejection would separate you from the finances. You left the accounts in my name. I left proof. The key." Trevor nodded. "The real ledger is inside a server Dominic cannot access without the second encryption phrase." "What phrase?" He looked directly at the hidden transmitter beneath my coat. "Is Mateo listening?" "Yes." Trevor laughed weakly. "Of course he is." He agreed because I asked. "That is how it starts. He gives you small choices so you stop noticing the big ones he makes for you." The words found a bruise Mateo had already created. "What is the phrase?" Trevor reached inside his coat. 3 red targeting lights appeared across his chest. Mateo's voice came through my earpiece. "Hands visible." Trevor slowly removed a folded photograph. It showed Mateo and Dominic outside my cathedral the night before the wedding. They had been there together. "Mateo knew Dominic was involved before he came for you," Trevor said. "That is a lie. Ask him why he allowed the wedding to begin." Glass shattered above us. Trevor threw himself to the floor as gunfire crossed the gallery. Mateo reached me before I saw him move. He pulled me behind a concrete column while Luca's team returned fire. Trevor crawled toward an emergency exit. "Stop him," Mateo ordered. I caught his sleeve. "The shooter." A figure moved along the upper walkway. Mateo raised his weapon but Trevor shouted, "Olivia has the phrase." The attacker fired again. Mateo shielded me. By the time security reached the upper level, the shooter had escaped through a maintenance hatch. Trevor disappeared too. On the floor where he had fallen I found the photograph. Mateo saw it in my hand. His face changed. "When?" I asked. "The night before the ceremony. You met Dominic there." "Yes." "Why?" "He told me Trevor planned to move the money during the wedding." "You already suspected him." "Yes. And still you let me put on that dress." "Clara, you could have stopped it before Sophie stood in that church." I needed Trevor to believe the operation remained hidden. The aquarium alarms screamed around us. I looked at the man who had just used his body to protect mine and understood that 2 truths could exist together. Mateo would take a bullet for me. He had also allowed me to be publicly destroyed because it served his plan. "You did not rescue me from the wedding," I said. His expression went still. "You waited until my humiliation became useful." I removed the sapphire ring and placed it in his hand. "The engagement is over." I left the estate the next morning with Sophie and Hannah. Mateo did not stop us. He increased security around Hannah's townhouse only after asking me to approve the plan. He gave me copies of every legal document connected to the forged accounts. He returned my apartment keys and removed the tracking access from my phone. The fact that he did everything correctly came too late to make leaving painless. Sophie cried in the car. "Did Mateo do something bad?" "Yes." "Is he sorry?" "I think so." "Then why can't we stay?" Because apologies did not automatically rebuild trust. Because loving someone capable of protecting me did not mean ignoring the ways he had used me. Because I needed Sophie to learn that care without respect was not enough. Sometimes people need space to become better, I said. Sophie hugged the cardboard dragon wings Mateo had worn at her tea party. Can he still come Tuesday? I nearly broke. We'll see. 3 days passed without contact from Mateo. On the 4th, Olivia Ward arrived at the hospital with a fractured wrist and fear in her eyes. She registered under a false name, but I recognized her from the airport video. I need to speak to you, she whispered. Raphael moved closer. Olivia looked at him. Not one of Rinaldi's men. He answers to me. That surprised her. We used an empty consultation room. Olivia removed a memory card from beneath her bandage. Dominic is moving the final funds tomorrow night during the Rinaldi Foundation Gala. He has the first phrase. Trevor has the second. Where is Trevor? Dominic caught him. Alive. For now. She handed me the card. It contains the original ledgers and security footage showing Dominic authorizing the accounts. Why help us? Her face twisted. Because Trevor told me we were escaping together. Then I learned he prepared a second passport and 1 ticket. Betrayal had finally become a language all of us understood. Does Dominic know you came here? I don't think. The hospital fire alarm sounded. Raphael's radio came alive. Security breach at Bennett residence. Child missing. The room disappeared around me. Sophie. Hannah called sobbing. A woman posing as a court officer had arrived with forged custody documents claiming Trevor's family had obtained emergency guardianship. When Hannah challenged her, 2 armed men entered through the rear door. They took Sophie. I called Mateo. He answered before the first ring ended. I know. This happened because I left the estate. No, his voice was absolute. This happened because Dominic chose to take her. Find her. I will. No, I forced myself to breathe. We find her. A pause. Then. Together. Dominic sent the demand 10 minutes later. Bring the memory card to the unfinished Rinaldi Tower. Come with Mateo. No police. No Bianca. At the bottom was a photograph of Sophie sitting beside Trevor, both tied to chairs. Mateo arrived at the hospital wearing no coat despite the snow. For the first time since I met him, his control looked close to breaking. I am sorry, he said. Save it for after. He nodded. We built the rescue plan together. Not because he allowed me. Because he finally understood there was no other way I would stand beside him. The unfinished tower rose above the river like a dark skeleton. Dominic controlled the security system and had men on every floor. Luca's team entered through a construction tunnel while Mateo and I took the main elevator carrying the memory card. Before the doors opened, Mateo looked at me. If something goes wrong, you follow Luca. No. Clara. We agreed. His jaw tightened. Then he said, What do you propose? If Sophie is separated from us, I go to her. You handle Dominic. And if there is gunfire? I get low and move toward cover. I work in emergency medicine, Mateo. I do not freeze. I know. The doors opened on the 42nd floor. Dominic waited beneath temporary construction lights. He resembled Mateo enough to make betrayal look hereditary. Same dark eyes, same controlled posture, but none of Mateo's restraint. Sophie sat near the windows. Trevor was beside her, bruised and bleeding. Mommy! I started forward. A guard raised his weapon. Dominic smiled. The memory card. Mateo held it up. Release them. You have become predictable, cousin. You have always mistaken loyalty for obedience. And you mistake weakness for reform. Dominic looked at me. She was useful. A discarded bride made excellent cover. Then you turned her into a symbol. I am not his symbol, I said. No. You are the reason he will sign control of the company to me. Documents waited on a concrete table. Mateo did not look at them. You can have the company. Dominic's smile faltered. Mateo continued. Release Sophie and Clara. I sign everything. I stared at him. The empire he had built. The power that defined every room he entered. He offered it without bargaining. Dominic did not believe him. Neither did I until Mateo placed his gun on the floor. Trevor suddenly drove his shoulder into the guard beside Sophie. The weapon fired into the ceiling. Sophie dropped beneath the chair exactly as I had taught her. Luca's team entered through the service doors. Chaos broke across the floor. I ran to Sophie. Trevor fell beside us with a bullet in his abdomen. I pressed my hands to the wound while Raphael cut Sophie free. Trevor looked at me, shocked that I was helping him. "You should let me die. I am not you." He laughed once and coughed blood. "The second phrase," he whispered, "what is essential, is invisible to the eye." "No. That was the first." His hand closed weakly around mine. "The second is what Sophie said when I asked why she loved you." I remembered. "'Cause mommy always comes back." Across the floor, Dominic escaped into the elevator with 2 guards. Matteo could have followed. Instead, he came to us. He lifted Sophie into his arms. She wrapped herself around his neck. "You came back," she cried. Matteo closed his eyes. "Always." Trevor survived surgery and entered federal custody. The memory card and encryption phrase opened the hidden server. Every transfer led to Dominic. So did the weapons shipments, the murders, and the order to use my wedding as cover. But Dominic still controlled the Rinaldi board. And the next evening, in front of every captain and executive, he intended to declare Matteo unfit to lead. The Rinaldi Foundation Gala took place despite the kidnapping. Dominic needed the room full. Politicians, judges, executives, and family captains would witness his takeover and accept it as inevitable. Matteo planned to enter with armed men. I stopped him. "If you turn the hotel into a battlefield, Dominic becomes right about you. He kidnapped Sophie." "I know. He tried to kill you." "I know. You want me to walk into that room and trust law enforcement?" "I want you to trust the evidence." Matteo looked at the memory card. For him, a weapon had always been more honest than a courtroom. He gave his gun to Luca. We entered the ballroom together. I was not wearing the engagement ring. Dominic noticed. "Even your bride abandoned you," he announced from the stage. The crowd turned. The sentence echoed the church, Trevor, and every stranger who had treated my humiliation as proof of my worth. I stepped forward before Matteo could answer. "I was never abandoned." Dominic smiled. "The video suggests otherwise. The video shows a coward running." A few people laughed. I continued down the aisle. "Trevor used my identity because you ordered him to. You arranged the forged accounts, the shooting, and my daughter's kidnapping." Dominic lifted his hands. An emotional accusation from a woman desperate to remain useful. Bianca activated the ballroom screens. The original ledgers appeared. Then security footage of Dominic entering the server room. Then his voice from Trevor's recording fully restored. "You were supposed to marry her and remain for 6 months. The room changed. Several captains stepped away from Dominic. He looked at Matteo. "You would destroy the family for her?" Matteo walked to my side. "No." His voice carried without effort. "I would destroy the lie that men like you are the family." Dominic reached inside his jacket. Federal agents entered through every door. Rebecca Sloan, the prosecutor Bianca had contacted, raised her weapon. "Hands where we can see them." Dominic looked at Matteo. "You brought federal agents into your own house." Matteo's expression remained calm. "I brought consequences." Dominic was arrested with 6 executives and 2 corrupt officials. No shots were fired. After the room emptied, Matteo and I stood beneath the same chandeliers where the press had announced our engagement. "You gave up the company before you knew Luca would reach Sophie," I said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because she was more important. You would have lost everything." "No." Matteo looked at me. "I would have lost power. I know the difference now." He reached into his pocket and removed the sapphire ring. He did not offer it. "I will announce tomorrow that the engagement has ended at your request." The freedom hurt more than I expected. "Is that what you want?" "No." "What do you want?" "You. Without danger, contracts, gratitude, or debt." His fingers closed around the ring. "But wanting is not the same as having a right." I touched his hand. "Then don't ask me tonight." Hope entered his face carefully. "When?" "When neither of us needs the answer." Dominic's attorneys attacked the evidence before the federal hearing began. They claimed Trevor had created the server to protect himself. They called Olivia a jealous accomplice. Bianca a sister defending family control, and me an ambitious woman who had traded one fiancé for a more powerful man. The last accusation reached every news channel before we entered the courthouse. I wore navy, not white. Mateo arrived separately under the terms of his cooperation agreement. No procession of black vehicles. No armed men clearing the steps. Only Luca, Bianca, and 2 federal marshals. Reporters shouted questions across the barricades. Clara, did Mateo promise you money? Were you involved before the wedding? Did you help manufacture evidence against Dominic? One woman called, "Are you still engaged?" I looked toward Mateo. He did not answer for me. "No," I said. The word hurt, but it was mine. Inside the courtroom, Trevor sat in federal custody wearing a gray suit chosen by his attorney. The last time I had seen him, blood covered his shirt on the tower floor. Now he looked ordinary again. That felt offensive. The judge asked whether he understood that his testimony could be used against him. "Yes." "Why did you open accounts in Clara Bennett's name?" the prosecutor asked. "Dominic told me to choose someone with clean financial history and no ties to the Rinaldi organization." "Why Ms. Bennett?" Trevor looked toward me. "Because she trusted me." The courtroom went quiet. He continued. "She worked long shifts. She let me handle paperwork because I said I wanted to help. I copied her identification, nursing license, and electronic signature." "Did she know?" "No." "Did she receive any money?" "No." "Was your wedding part of the plan?" "Yes." Trevor lowered his eyes. "Once we were married, I would move the final funds through a joint tax structure." 6 months later, Dominic planned to make it appear that Clara stole the money and disappeared. A reporter in the back row stopped typing. The prosecutor displayed the airport video. "Why did you publicly reject her?" "I found out Dominic intended to kill Olivia and me after the transfer. I panicked. I thought if I humiliated Clara publicly, people would believe I wanted nothing to do with her and stop looking at her." I almost laughed. He had destroyed Sophie's sense of safety and still wanted credit for protection. My attorney allowed me to leave the room before Dominic's lawyer cross-examined him. Mateo followed into the corridor but stopped several feet away. "You do not have to listen," he said. "I need to." "No. You need to decide whether listening helps you." The correction mattered. I returned to the courtroom. Dominic's attorney asked Trevor whether Mateo knew about the plan before the ceremony. Trevor hesitated. He knew money would move during the wedding. So Mr. Rinaldi allowed Ms. Bennett to be used as bait. Mateo's lawyer objected. The judge allowed the question. Trevor looked toward Mateo. "Yes." The word moved through the courtroom like a blade. Mateo took the stand after him. His attorney advised him to limit his answers. He did not. "Did you know Trevor Hayes might flee on the wedding day?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes." "Did you warn Clara Bennett?" "No." "Why?" "I believe Trevor would lead us to the person controlling the accounts if he thought the operation remained hidden." "You decided Ms. Bennett's wedding could continue as part of your surveillance?" "Yes." "Did you consider the emotional harm to her or her daughter?" "No." The honesty made several people turn toward me. Mateo did not. He kept his eyes on the judge. "I considered physical security and financial evidence. I treated humiliation as temporary because it was not happening to me." Dominic's attorney stood. "And after allowing this supposed humiliation, you arrived dramatically and announced that she would leave with you." "Yes." "Because you had been interested in her for years." "Yes." "So you used a corporate investigation to remove another man and take his bride." Mateo's expression hardened, but his voice remained even. "No." Trevor removed himself. "I used the investigation to protect my company. I used Clara's wedding because I believed my objective mattered more than her consent." The attorney paused, surprised by the answer. Mateo continued. "That was wrong. Yet Ms. Bennett later became your fiancée. Temporarily. Was she financially dependent upon you?" "No." "Did she live in your home?" "For security." "Did you control that security?" "At first." "At first." "She required that the team answer to her." The attorney smiled. "You expect this court to believe the so-called Mafia king surrendered control to a nurse he barely knew?" Mateo looked at me then. "Yes." The single word held more truth than his vows at the press conference ever had. Dominic's attorney moved closer. Do you consider Clara Bennett part of your property, organization, or family interest? No. Then what claim do you have over her? None. My breath caught. Mateo's gaze remained on mine. If Clara stands beside me, it is because she chooses to. If she leaves, I have no right to stop her. The statement destroyed Dominic's argument that I had acted under coercion. It also ended the last invisible bargain between us. Olivia testified next. She confirmed Dominic's accounts, the weapons shipments, and Trevor's plan. She also produced messages proving Dominic ordered the attack on the estate and Sophie's kidnapping. Then Cynthia Hayes was called. Trevor's mother entered wearing black and looking offended by the existence of consequences. She admitted she had known her son planned to leave before the ceremony. You allowed Clara and her daughter to enter that church? The prosecutor asked. Cynthia lifted her chin. Trevor said it was necessary. Did you know he had used Clara's identity? No. The prosecutor displayed a message from Cynthia to Trevor sent 2 days before the wedding. Make sure the single mother takes the fall. You have sacrificed enough for her. Cynthia's face lost color. I looked at the woman who had held out her hand for the engagement ring while my daughter cried. For a year, I had imagined what I would say if the truth ever forced her to see me again. When the moment came, I felt nothing worth spending words on. The judge ruled that the evidence against Dominic was admissible, and that the accounts in my name had been created through identity theft. A formal declaration cleared me of financial involvement. The order did not erase the video. It did not return my first wedding day. But it placed the truth where strangers could not edit it into something easier to mock. Outside the courthouse, Mateo found me near the stone steps. The engagement statement will be released this afternoon, he said. It confirms that you ended it, and that no financial agreement exists between us. You planned that already? You asked for it in the original contract. He remembered. Thank you. Mateo removed the sapphire ring from his pocket. I had not realized he carried it. This belongs to you under the agreement. No. It was given publicly. It represented something that was never real. His face changed. I softened the truth because cruelty would not make me stronger. Not real then, I said. Whatever comes later should have a different beginning. Mateo closed his hand around the ring. Will there be something later? I don't know. He accepted the uncertainty. A year earlier, he would have treated it as a problem to solve. Now he opened the courthouse door and stepped aside. I walked through first. Dominic's arrest did not save Mateo from his own past. The server contained records of bribery, illegal gambling, extortion, and violence that predated Dominic's conspiracy. Mateo could have hidden portions of the evidence and protected himself. He gave federal investigators everything. I will not build a clean future on selected truth, he told Bianca. The decision placed Rinaldi Global under independent supervision. Criminal subsidiaries were seized. Captains who refused reform were removed. Employee pensions and legitimate hotels, construction companies, and shipping operations were protected through a monitored trust. Mateo lost unilateral control. He also faced charges for crimes he had actually committed. His attorneys negotiated a cooperation agreement that included home confinement, financial penalties, and years of oversight. The city called it the fall of the Mafia king. Sophie called it the period when Mateo had to wear an ankle bracelet and could not attend tea parties outside his house. He moved out of the estate before I did. The house belongs to the family trust now, he explained. You and Sophie may remain until your apartment is repaired. I don't want charity. It is not charity. Dominic's conspiracy displaced you. You are very skilled at making help sound like a legal obligation. I am trying not to make it sound like love. The honesty silenced me. I returned to work. I resumed my nursing degree. Sophie returned to school under protection she helped design. One guard she knew, no secret trackers, and a panic button inside a bracelet she chose herself. Mateo called only when invited. He attended counseling. He apologized to Hannah for using my wedding as an operation. He apologized to Sophie for allowing danger into her life. When Sophie asked whether he still loved us, he answered, "Yes, but love does not mean I get to decide where you live." Months passed. The public forgot the wedding slowly. I did not. But the memory changed. I no longer saw myself as the woman Trevor abandoned or the bride Matteo rescued. I saw a woman who had walked out of the church holding her daughter's hand, and had continued choosing every step after it. 1 year after the wedding, the old cathedral hosted the opening ceremony for the Bennett Rinaldi Children's Clinic. The clinic was funded with money recovered from Dominic's accounts, and would provide emergency care to children whose parents could not afford treatment. I had completed my degree and accepted a position as its nursing director. Matteo arrived without an armed procession. Luca drove him because the court still restricted his travel. Bianca came with him. Sophie ran down the cathedral steps wearing a purple dress and threw herself into Matteo's arms. You missed 3 tea parties. I was legally prohibited from leaving the county. That is not a good excuse. I agree. He placed her down and looked at me. The year had changed him. There was less armor in his posture and more gray near his temples. He remained dangerous, but the danger no longer filled every silence between us. Walk with me, he asked. We entered the empty church before the ceremony. The altar looked smaller than I remembered. This is where you said I was leaving with you, I said. Yes. You sounded very certain. I was used to certainty being created by volume and armed men. And now? Now I ask. Matteo removed the sapphire ring from his pocket. I kept it because returning it to a jeweler felt impossible, and wearing it myself would invite questions. I laughed. He did not kneel immediately. Clara, the first time I took you from this church, danger made the choice for both of us. The second time a contract did. I do not want another arrangement. He placed the ring in my palm. No debt. No protection agreement. No company. If you say no, you leave this church with Sophie, and I will still fund the clinic, honor every promise, and never punish the answer. My eyes filled. What are you asking? A real first date. I stared at him. You brought an engagement ring to ask for dinner? I was advised that proposing immediately would demonstrate poor therapeutic progress. Bianca. The therapist. I closed my fingers around the ring. Dinner. Hope transformed his face. Friday. Saturday. I work Friday. Saturday. I handed the ring back. Keep that until you earn the next question. Matteo smiled. Yes, ma'am. Matteo earned the question 18 months later. Not with diamonds, bodyguards, or declarations before frightened crowds. He earned it by arriving when he said he would. By asking before solving. By accepting that my work sometimes mattered more than his schedule. By attending tea parties without threatening anyone who photographed the crown. By explaining his mistakes to Sophie instead of pretending adults were always right. By living under consequences without turning them into someone else's burden. When he proposed, it happened in my kitchen while Sophie decorated cupcakes. He knelt on a floor covered in purple frosting. No debt, he said. Sophie lifted one finger. No bargains. No bargains, Matteo agreed. I looked at the man who had entered my worst day like a storm and had spent years learning not to become one. Yes. Our wedding was small. Hannah stood beside me. Bianca stood beside Matteo. Luca cried and denied it. Sophie scattered petals in the wrong direction and then returned to collect them. Trevor's mother was not invited. Neither were reporters. At the altar, the priest asked who gave me away. Sophie answered before anyone else. Nobody. She came by herself. The entire church laughed. Matteo did not say, "She leaves with me." He held out his hand. I took it. After the ceremony, a guest asked Sophie whether she was happy to have the Mafia king as her father. She corrected him with the confidence of a child raised among complicated truths. He isn't a king anymore. Matteo looked at me. No, he said. I have something better. The first wedding ended with a man running from me. The second began with a man waiting for my choice. That was the difference between being claimed and being loved. When we walked down the aisle, Matteo did not lead me. He walked beside me. And this time, when the cathedral doors opened, I was not escaping humiliation, danger, or debt. I was leaving with him because I wanted to,